Now we're ready for our very own Blake Timm to speak about his World Athletics Championship experience.
Thank you very much. And I mentioned before I started, you don't wear purple very often on the Pacific University campus. So this is about probably the only time in 20 years that maybe I've worn purple. And of course, who do I see walking up towards the University Center?
Jen.
The athletic director, Keith Buckley. So thankfully he didn't give me too much garbage about that. But yes, I'm here to talk about the experience I got to have this summer. Now, in the last 2 decades, the state of Oregon has been able to play host to a lot of high-profile international caliber sporting events. Just in the last year, the state has hosted the MLS Cup. It has hosted the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament, and perhaps the highest profile of all was the World Athletics Championships. And in July, I had the privilege to serve as part of the media operations team as the world's top track and field athletes came to Oregon, and specifically Eugene. And it was quite an honor. I'm a track and field guy first and foremost. Ran it in high school and college, and I've been involved in athletics for 23 years. So to be able to have a chance to work this event was a very neat experience, and it was really an extension of what the job that I do on a regular basis, working in college athletics. Now, my wife Melissa has been very supportive of me taking advantage of these experiences, but as part of that, I need to let you in on one of our inside jokes. So back in 2008, the U.S. Olympic track and field trials were held down at Hayward Field. It was the first time they had been held in Oregon since 1980. And Melissa agreed to let me go down and work all 10 days of the meet. So staying down in Eugene, working there for 10 days. And when we talked, I told her that this was really going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They hosted the trials in 2012. In 2016, in 2020, they've hosted 2 or 3 world championships. So poor Melissa has been wondering how many lifetimes I've gone through now to be able to work all these big events. But in all honesty, she has been a great support in letting me not only do my job to the best of my ability, but be able to take part in these large caliber events. So if you don't know, what exactly were the World Athletics Championships? Well, there's the designated world championship for the sport of track and field, and in other parts of the world, track and field is known as athletics, so hence the name World Athletics Championships. It is sanctioned and conducted by an organization called World Championships, which is the world governing body for track and field. And this is a meet that is held once every 2 years somewhere around the world. So it's usually held in non-Olympic years. It's a little bit of a funky change this over the past couple of years thanks to COVID. And so because of that, there's actually going to be another World Championships next year, not in Oregon. It'll be over in Europe. So how big of a deal is this? So this was the 20th World Athletics Championships. Of the first 19 editions, it's only been hosted outside of Europe 6 times. Only once has the meet ever been held in the Americas, and up until this year had never been held in the United States. Eugene had hosted the World Junior Track and Field Championships in 2014, and the Oregon Convention Center hosted the World Indoor Track and Field Championships in 2016. So in 2015, World Athletics announced that Eugene would be the site of the 2021 World Championships, but there was no 2021 championships, thanks again to COVID. The meet was postponed to 2022. And then once again, due to the postponement, the 2023 World Championships are going to be held in Budapest, Hungary. After that's done, and after the Olympic year in 2024, they're going to return to the typical every 2-year cycle. So after 2023, the next World Championships will be in 2025. So the biggest draw glory in the World Athletic Championships to the United States was Hayward Field, which is among the top track and field venues in the world. Hayward Field was originally built in 1919 as the University of Oregon's main outdoor athletic venue. It was converted exclusively to use for track and field in 1966 after the football team moved into Autzen Stadium. The stadium was rebuilt from the ground up in between 2018 and 2020, mainly in preparation for the World Athletics Championships. Hayward Field has hosted the USA Track and Field National Championships multiple times, including for the last 4 Olympiads. It is also the venue for the annual Prefontaine Classic, which is the only U.S. track and field meet that is part of what they call the World Athletics Diamond League, which is a series of 14 elite international track and field meets with professional athletes competing for prize money. Now, a little bit of trivia about the stadium's namesake. Hayward Field is named for legendary coach Bill Hayward, who coached the track and field program at the University of Oregon for 44 years, in addition to being the athletic trainer and coaching a couple different sports over the years. Before arriving in Eugene, he served as the head coach of track and field at a number of other schools, including the 1901 season right here at Pacific University. And he helped coach a future Olympic gold medalist in the pole vault named A.C. Gilbert, who he won in the 1908 Olympic Games and has Gilbert Hall here on campus named for him. The World Athletic Championships meant quite literally welcoming the world to Oregon. The event sold over 146,000 tickets over 10 days and 17 competitive sessions. That's a lot of people. The largest single-day attendance was 21,065 on the first Sunday of the championships, or day 3 of the championships. That day included the finals of the women's pole vault, the men's 110-meter hurdles, and one of the marquee events, the finals of the women's 100 meters, which was swept by the dynamic Jamaican trio of Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, Sharika Jackson, and Elaine Thompson-Hara. The expected visitor spending in Oregon during the championships by people coming in was $224 million. That included plenty of hotel nights, specifically around Lane County. Virtually every hotel in Lane County was booked during the course of the championships. For a volunteer like me, I actually, for the 4 days that I worked, drove back and forth each day from Forest Grove to Eugene because if there was a hotel room available, you were looking at Motel 6 for $250 a night. It was a pretty spendy proposition. Now, additionally, teams were spread out across the state to train for 2 to 3 weeks prior to the championships. So they had teams that would fly into Portland or Eugene, and they would bus to exotic locales like La Grande, Klamath Falls, and yes, even Forest Grove. So this is a page out of a book that they sent to all the international delegations with different training site locations, and featured prominently is our own Pacific University in Forest Grove. And I can't report, were there a couple teams that did train here in
I
Alina?
don't know if they actually ended up with a team or not, but we had 2 locations. We actually proposed Pacific and Forest Grove High School. They're the top 2 in the state, so we were blessed with a lot of people.
Yeah, so there were teams spread out across the state before coming into Eugene for the actual meet itself. So how did I get involved? Well, these World Championships were literally a massive volunteer effort. While World Athletics had a neat local organizing committee that had a small amount of paid employees, and of course the international organization that brought people in from overseas, the vast majority of the people working at the meet were volunteers. There were a total of 1,583 volunteers who worked as part of the World Championships. There were over 3,400 volunteer uniforms that were distributed, and over 10,500 meals were served to volunteers over the 10 days of the meet. They actually turned the main court at MacArthur Court at the University of Oregon into a volunteer check-in and meal and rest center. So if you attended the meet, most of the official workers that you would have encountered would have almost exclusively been volunteers. For the media operations crew that I was connected with, there were 184 volunteers that turned in over 900 shifts and over 4,500 hours of service during the course of the meet. Now, for those of you who like these big athletic events, a little secret you might keep tucked in the back of your head. Most of these events, like the World Cup, like many NCAA championships, World Athletics championships, even our own high school's championships here in Oregon, they rely heavily on volunteers to make everything happen. So ticket takers, to some extent officials that are raking pits, media people, a lot of them are volunteering. So if you are ever interested in seeing how things work on the other side of an athletic event, or you're just curious, maybe, and there's chances for volunteering. So keep your eyes open and you might have a chance to see things on the other side of the fence. Now, becoming part of the media operations team for me required specialized volunteers, and that's where my experience as a college athletic communications professional came in. I've had the privilege of working every major international meet that's come through Oregon over the last few years. And that includes the 2014 Junior Championships and the 2016 World Indoor Championships held in Portland. On top of that, I've been the press conference moderator for each of the Division I men's and women's basketball tournaments that have come through Portland since 2015. This December, I will be up in Seattle as Seattle Pacific University hosts all of the Division II fall championships with the exception of football, and I'll be serving as the media coordinator for the two soccer championships. So having some experience in sports has opened up some doors to some very special experiences, and being at the World Athletics Championships was right at the top of that list. So what exactly did I do? So as my role as a media relations volunteer, my role was helping to serve over 300 members of the international media that came to Eugene to cover the meet. For my 4 days, I was specifically assigned to the press tribune, which are these 4 areas up there at the top of the stands adjacent to the finish line at Hayward Field. And my roles included, basically everything from making sure their internet worked, to making sure that the results screens they had on their desks were working properly and they were able to access things, to answering questions they might have to, on the first 2 days, directing them to their seats. Hey, where do I go? I'm in row 220, section A, row 5. Where is that? So what you see here with the media tribunes, these 2 sections here were almost exclusively U.S. media and internet media that specialized in track and field. This 3rd section, which is the one I was assigned to for the 4 days, was all the international media. So China, Japan, Canada, a number of African countries, literally all over the world. And this section right here, this was all broadcast media. So the way the international broadcast worked is World Athletics actually sends out one specific feed for the meet. So everybody in the world is seeing the same video, but different countries send their own announcers, and they either integrate it into a television broadcast. So I think the NBC people were actually up here at the top of the section. There was another European outlet that was stationed right here at the top of 218. And they would lay their own commentary based on whatever event it was over the TV feed. So what you saw on NBC is exactly what somebody was seeing on CBC in Canada, or maybe they're seeing on the BBC in Great Britain, or on Japanese TV or wherever. It was just different voices providing the commentary.
Who provides that script?
Who provides the script for the commentators?
No, the pictures.
The pictures? World Athletics. So they pay a decent amount of money to bring a technical crew in to do all the video. They had a TV truck stationed out, just south of the stadium, between the stadium and the hammer pit. They didn't necessarily use the hammer pit outside of the venue for the meet. They actually threw the hammer within the stadium itself. But it was, they were there probably for a good 3 weeks in the lead up to the start of the championships, just to make sure everything was dialed in and ready to go. Great question. So the media operations for the World Athletics Championship was massive and comprised 3 different areas inside and outside of Hayward Field, outside of where those TV trucks were stationed. So in addition to those media tribunes inside the stadium, the tennis center at U of O was converted into a huge media workspace. It served hundreds of photographers who covered the meet, and as well as any media members who were not assigned a seat in the tribune. So you had to apply, you had to be accepted for credentials, and then hopefully you were lucky enough to get a seat in the stadium so you could watch things as they happened. What you see over here is what is called the mixed zone. And so after each race, athletes are escorted through this mixed zone, which provides media members an opportunity to get post-race interviews and reaction. The media zone is divided up into 3 sections. The first section is for broadcast right holders, so people who have paid money to World Athletics for the rights to actually cover the championships. There was a second section for print media, which was largely this middle section right here. And then there was a third section that's off the photo, and that was for bloggers, other publications, people who weren't necessarily rights holders of some sort. So, and then off to the back here, you see this curtain back here, that was the press conference area for the championships. So when there was a post-race medal press conference, like when the three Jamaican women were at 100 meters, or if there was a special press conference, they had a session with World Athletics President Seth Coe. They actually had John Carlos, who was the 1968 Black Power salute that took place at the Mexico City Games. He did a press conference because he was on the campus for a special presentation for World Athletics. All those took place downstairs as well. So that was a pretty happening place both day and night during the championships. So when photographers were shooting action, the still photographers and videographers were assigned to a number of different areas all around the stadium. Basically, wherever you see these green dots is where they were assigned to shoot from. And then in addition, there were also, you could check out a bib based on what your assignment was to be able to shoot from within the track itself. Now, majority of the photographers were stationed to shoot in areas B and C, which looked right down on the finish line, because I think everyone was looking for all those great finish line photos. However, this did not include this clueless guy right here. So you may have heard about this. This is one of the heats of the men's steeplechase. And somehow a photographer got himself on the track, and the runners actually had to go around him on their first lap. I'm not sure what he was thinking, but I'm hoping he doesn't shoot a track and field event again. So thankfully nobody was hurt, no athletes were hurt, no photographer was hurt. But this is a good example of what not to do. So the media operations team was far from a U.S. dominated operation. Up on the photo to the right, only two of us in this, actually, in this photo, yeah, two of us in this photo are actually from the United States. Myself and then Brian is from Eugene himself. So our two team leads were from Great Britain and Canada, and I worked specifically with other volunteers from France and China and Great Britain. In all, volunteers from 12 U.S. states and 13 different countries comprise the media relations operation. Now, while it's usually frowned upon, I was able to double up on duties with my regular job while being a media operations volunteer. Most of you know that my day job is the Assistant Commissioner for Communications for the Great Northwest Athletic Conference, so handling their media relations and statistics and such. Simon Fraser University, who's one of the 10 schools in our conference and the only member of the NCAA that's in Canada, had 3 alumni that were running for Team Canada. I was actually able to do interviews with each of them, uploaded those to our conference's YouTube page, and I was able to write a feature-length story of their experiences that we ran on our conference website at the end of the meet. Now, the woman on the left, her name is Lindsay Butterworth. She was the 2015 NCAA Division II national champion in the 800 meters, both indoors and outdoors. And she represented Team Canada as well at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. On the right, his name is Catherine Prosiviat. He was a conference champion in 2015 and 2016 indoors in the 800 meters. He was actually a late addition to the team. He didn't find out until the week before that he was coming down to Eugene to compete for Team Canada. And when I interviewed him and got this picture taken, he actually thought that he had not advanced past the first round. And as it ended up, we both found out after the fact that he got the last qualifying spot and ended up advancing to the semifinals of the 1500 meters, which, you know, a first time out in an international competition, and to find out just a week before that you're actually in, pretty darn good accomplishment. I'm pretty proud of it. So like many volunteer efforts, participation does have its perks. So the biggest perk was getting to watch a lot of the meet for free. considering the tickets were going for about $200 a pop, depending on what session you were involved with. For somebody who's a track and field geek like me, that's a pretty cool opportunity. All volunteers receive free meals as part of their work shift. And while many volunteer opportunities provide some sort of clothing, when you're talking about a world championship, they kind of go overboard with it. The volunteer uniform they gave out to the volunteers included 3 polo shirts, 2 jackets, a hat, a pair of pants, a pair of shorts, 2 pairs of socks, and a pair of brand new ASIC shoes. So not a bad little haul for coming down and doing some volunteer work. Essentially, my back-to-school shopping was set. Now, as for Rotary volunteers, we are used to the satisfaction of knowing that our volunteer work has made the community better, too. The same holds true for working an event like this. I know that my work helped a number of members of the international media do their jobs better and meet their deadlines to be able to promote a sport that I truly love. And there is great satisfaction in having been able to do that. Now, one other perk that I was able to take advantage of was actually getting to run a race on the Hayward Field track. So there's a tradition at the World Championships of having a media 800 meters race on one of the mornings when there's no scheduled events for the true international athletes. I do not count as a true international athlete. So as part of the media relations staff, I got to line up with a bunch of the journalists from around the world. This is a great way for many of these journalists have already been in town for almost 2 weeks. And so this is a great opportunity, one, to say thank you to them by giving them a cool experience of getting to go out and do this race, and also too is a chance to kind of blow off some steam. They're working pretty hard from sun up to sundown, and it's a chance for a lot of them to just have a lot of fun. Over 100 journalists and volunteers took part in this race. There were 7 different heats. There were 6 men's heats, and then they had a women's heat as well. There were prizes given out, so each of the winners of the heat got a little clock. Actually first and second. Third, if you were third year heat, you actually got a World Championships baton like they used during the relay races. During the races itself, they actually had the same PA announcer that did the entire meet. He was announcing the races at the same time. So this was and it was even complete with lane introductions. So it was like I stood up to line, they were introducing everyone, and then from the United States, Blake Timm. And I was like, okay, this just feels wrong. But it was a ton of fun. So here is some video proof that I actually did cross the finish line, taken by a friend of mine, and perhaps my first and perhaps my last race at Hayward Field. As you can tell, I am pretty darn out of shape. Finished 800 meters in 3 minutes, 21 seconds. Not bad for a journalist, but I'm definitely not going to be racing in the World Championships final anytime soon. Now, the overall winner of this thing, and these are working journalists, there was a guy from Switzerland that ran 1 minute 54.62 seconds. They are talented journalists, and a number of them are pretty fast. Not me. All right, Bryce, you want to come over and switch the audio? So the last thing I want to leave you with is to experience that moment that every world-class athlete works for, and that's the chance to be crowned the best in their sport. I've always been a sucker for medal ceremonies, watching them during the Olympics, but so having a chance to actually see these medal ceremonies take place live and in person was a pretty darn cool experience, and I want to be able to share that with all of you. Now, this particular medal ceremony happened to be the men's 200 meters, which was swept by 3 athletes from the United States. So it was in front of a pretty packed house. I mean, it doesn't look like there's a lot of people over there, but all these stands were full. So go ahead and watch this and enjoy. This is what it feels like to be part of a medal ceremony during a World Championship.
The medals will be presented by Winning World Athletics Council member. representing the United States of America, and on the track. The national anthem of the United States of America.
It chills just watching that again. Very cool moment. Well, we've reached the finish line, so happy to take any questions you might have. Russ?
Have you been asked to help out next year?
Have I been asked to help out next year? The answer is no. And considering that my oldest daughter is graduating from high school next year, I will be sticking close to home.
Were there any events or competitors that you were excited to see at the games?
Oh my goodness, where do I start? The question was, were there any competitors or events that I was excited to see? I got to see both finals of the men's and women's 100 meters. I got to see the finals for the men's and women's 200. Both of those were fully dynamic and exciting races. There were a few that I didn't get to see that I wish I would have, like the men's 1500 meters, where the guy who won it from Great Britain, his dad was actually the stadium PA announcer. So he got to announce the son's world championship race, and man, he held it together until the end when he finally broke down and said, "That is my son. I coach him, and he's a world champion." So also got to see the women's pole vault, which is pretty exciting. And for me, seeing the women's 800 meters and some of the heats of the men's 1500 with the athletes that I knew who were competing in the meet were pretty special. Other questions? Yes.
So, you hear about something coming up like this. How does one go about volunteering? Do I contact you, or how does that happen?
So the question is, how does the volunteer stuff work? So for the track meets down in Eugene, there's actually an organizing body called Tracktown USA that coordinates all the volunteers, and they do volunteer stuff for the Pac-12 championships when those are held at Hayward Field, the U.S. Track and Field Championships, the NCAA Championships, which are these days just about held annually in Eugene, and for any of the international meets, including the Prefontaine Classic. So for that, you can go to their website, which is gotracktownusa.com, and they will have a volunteer link that will take you to a form that you can fill out to get set up as a volunteer. For other events like NCAA Championships and other sporting events that come to the state, just kind of have to watch Sport Oregon, which is kind of they're the organization that tries to bring a lot of these championships to Oregon. They're another good resource to check out for trying to find out where volunteers are. Feel free to ask me as well. I hear about them quite a bit too. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you very much.